In this video, we uncover a hitman-style assassination that shocked the Spanish resort of the Costa del Sol. On November 21, 2019, 39-year-old Peter Williamson from Salford was driving home from the gym. He pulled up outside his luxury villa around 3:15 p.m. His UK-plated Audi barely had time to stop. A car appeared beside him. Gunmen opened fire. 8 9mm bullets. One straight through his heart. He was dead before help could arrive. His mother witnessed everything. She screamed, tried to save him, but he was already gone. Two men from Greater Manchester, Aaron Asquith and Edward Taylor, had flown to Spain 10 days earlier. They rented a car, watched Williamson's villa, and waited for the perfect moment to strike. Spanish police called it a drug gang hit, a settling of scores between Salford rivals. The men were arrested in 2020, charged with murder, and later released on bail in 2023. As of today, they still haven't faced trial. Williamson's family insists he was innocent, a devoted father running legitimate businesses. But Spanish authorities tell a very different story. Today, we delve into the double life of Williamson, a man whose secret world would ultimately lead to his brutal assassination. Peter Andrew Williamson wasn't a stranger to Salford. Born and raised in Kersal, Greater Manchester, he was known locally by the nickname Snaggle. At 39 years old, he was already married with children and had recently moved to Spain, settling in the quiet upscale Riviera del Sol area of Mijas, part of the sun-soaked Costa del Sol. To those who knew him, Williamson appeared to be doing well. He wore luxury watches, drove a sleek, UK-plated Audi, dressed in designer brands, lived in a gated villa in one of the most desirable areas on the coast. To the outside world, he was the image of success, a devoted family man who'd made it abroad. However, Spanish investigators saw a very different picture. According to the Guardia Civil, Williamson wasn't just an ordinary expatriate. They claimed he had numerous criminal records back in the United Kingdom. Intelligence reports went even further, suggesting that Williamson was a player in Salford's ongoing gang war, the same brutal conflict that had already claimed the lives of notorious figures Paul Massey in 2015 and John Kinsella in 2018. Investigators believed Williamson had been living in Spain since 2015, but that his move wasn't just for the sunshine. They suspected he'd fallen out with a Manchester gang leader, a rift connected to the violent feud that had torn through Salford's underworld. Then, in March 2019, just months before his death, he was arrested by Spanish police, accused of shipping cannabis out of Malaga. Reports in national newspapers described him as a man with a history of drug trafficking and links to a local cannabis social club, but his family told a different story. To them, Williamson was a hard-working entrepreneur, a devoted father, not a criminal. They dismissed the allegations as nothing more than sensational rumors, fueled by media eager for scandal. The truth, however, lay somewhere in the middle, buried beneath a life where legitimate business and organized crime blurred into one. And in that shadowy space, danger was never far behind. By 2019, the Costa del Sol had earned a grim reputation. It wasn't just a sun-soaked paradise for tourists and retirees. It had become a killing ground for British gangs settling scores far from home. That year was the most violent in memory for the region. Over 20 murders were linked to drug and gang conflicts, many carried out in broad daylight with military-grade weapons. Foreign and domestic gangs operated openly, treating the coastline like their personal territory. Spanish press warned that fragmented criminal organizations were treating drug trafficking like a logistics business, moving product with ruthless efficiency. When police pressure mounted, the gangs responded with tit-for-tat killings that shocked even seasoned investigators. The violence wasn't hidden. It was unfolding in broad daylight. Shootings erupted near residential streets, tourist hotspots, even places where families walk their children to school. In February 2019, Marbella businessman Marco Jacot was executed in a drive-by shooting, his car riddled with bullets as terrified onlookers watched. Then, just months later, in December 2019, a French national was gunned down in another brazen attack. the once glamorous Costa del Sol, known for its beaches, luxury villas, and nightlife, had transformed into a battleground. And soon, Williamson's name would be added to that growing list of casualties in Spain's escalating underworld war. On November 11th, 2019, two men from Salford boarded a flight from Manchester to Barcelona. Aaron Asquith, aged 25, and Edward Taylor, 39. But this wasn't a holiday. After landing, the pair picked up a white Opel Corsa from a rental dealership in Villafranca, using a fake ID. From there, they began the long drive south, nearly 1,000 kilometers to Mijas, the quiet coastal town near Malaga, where Williamson lived with his family. For days, they waited, watching, studying his every move. Spanish investigators would later confirm that Asquith and Taylor had been surveilling Williamson's villa, carefully documenting his daily routines. When he left, when he returned, where he parked, and at what moments he was most vulnerable. And on November 21st, 2019, their mission reached its deadly conclusion. It was a Thursday afternoon, around 3:15 p.m. Williamson had just left the gym and was driving home in his Audi. The sun shone over Riviera del Sol and the streets were quiet, almost serene. He pulled up outside his villa on Calle Orfebres, near the AP7 motorway toll booth. As he began to park, a car suddenly appeared beside him. The gunmen didn't hesitate. They opened fire at point-blank range, bullets ripping through the driver's window. 7 shots struck Williamson, one piercing his heart. He was dead before he even could react. Neighbors heard the gunfire and rushed outside. Emergency responders arrived within minutes. His mother was on the scene, screaming, performing CPR, desperately trying to save her son. But there was nothing anyone could do. Williamson's body lay in the street, covered by a sheet, as forensic teams combed the scene for clues. No weapon was recovered. The killers vanished into the maze of coastal roads, leaving behind a trail of shock and terror. A brutal execution carried out with chilling precision. Spanish and UK authorities launched a joint cross-border investigation immediately after Williamson's killing. Investigators believed he had been tracked and ambushed. His murder tied to a larger criminal conflict that stretched all the way from Greater Manchester to the Spanish coast. By May 2020, the investigation had identified 2 suspects, Aaron Asquith and Edward Taylor, both from Salford. Police described them as members of an important criminal organization dedicated to marijuana distribution. After the murder, he had traveled across Europe and South America, returning to Spain just before the COVID lockdown. When officers raided the villa he was staying in, they discovered 20 kilograms of vacuum-packed cannabis, allegedly meant for trafficking. Taylor was arrested in the UK. In mid-May 2020, he flew home from Malaga and was detained on arrival for breaching a house arrest order unrelated to Williamson's murder. He was quickly extradited to Spain under a European arrest warrant to face murder charges. By summer 2020, both men were formally charged. Investigators indicated that a dispute between rival drug traffickers was the primary motive, and that the suspects were part of a Salford-based criminal network. And Williamson's murder was a revenge strike in a broader feud, a deadly clash between gangs operating across borders. After nearly 3 years in custody, a Spanish court in Fuengirola granted both men bail in April 2023. Each was released on €20,000 bail, subject to strict conditions. They surrendered their passports and were required to check in with authorities twice a month. Their lawyers argued that the case was still under investigation and that such a lengthy pre-trial detention had become unreasonable. The court agreed, allowing Asquith and Taylor to remain free pending trial. As of late 2025, the case remains unresolved. No trial outcome or verdict has been made public. Both men continue to await further hearings in the Spanish court system on murder charges. Despite their release, the suspects are still considered dangerous. The investigation continues, and justice for Williamson remains elusive, hanging in the balance as the legal process drags on. The story of Peter Williamson reflects both sides of the drug world, the allure and the danger that come with it. It's a world where quick money and high stakes collide, where fortune favors the ruthless, and where one wrong move can cost you everything. Williamson was a prime example. He'd built systems in the UK that made him rich, relocated to Spain, and tried to keep a low profile. On the surface, it worked. He looked like a man who'd escaped the chaos, living under the sun, surrounded by luxury. But in the world he moved in, peace never lasts. The battle for control, for dominance, for territory, it's constant. And in that kind of business, enemies don't forget. In Williamson's case, his rivals flew 1,000 miles just to find him. A brutal reminder that no matter how far you run, your past always finds a way to catch up.